Again, I warned you we were going to get a sell-off. We had these warning signs over here. Told you we were going to get some kind of pullback past the January 13th low. And again, be watching if we try to bottom surrounding our 100 period moving average, but things are turning bearish here. The risk is that we take out that January 13th low. Again, my guess is we're going to establish a higher low. Signals are bearish. Pullback I warned you about is happening. Here we peaked with inauguration day. Again, we saw momentum go negative. On my other chart here, bars reflecting momentum remains bearish. Again, we're seeing the balance of power now go negative. Momentum line's been bearish. We're seeing the cloud being taken out now, and on the other chart, the ribbon going bearish. So again, signals continue to nail it. We'll see if we can establish a higher low or slightly lower low that again holds above our January 13th low. Bitcoin, as I'm making the video, it's going negative. I'm making the ending of the video at the end, just showing you some of my favorite charts. And again, we've got negative, giving back about a 3.5% rally. But the 100 period moving average directly below, I'll be watching that. So far, we've moved beyond the 78.6 Fibonacci here. We'll be watching, do we go back and test this low and then try to bottom out or go slightly lower? But I do expect this low is going to hold at the January 13th low. Watch the 100 period moving average. Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average. Bounce surrounding this area. Critical mass has gone negative. So again, we'll see if we try to bottom out with the higher low or not. Taking out the January low would be very bearish. Dropping and holding below the 100 period moving average would be very bearish. So we'll be watching that 100 period closely. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. The signals have just been nailing it. I just put out the information here, show you the charts that I constantly look at each day. I need to hear from you in order to make it work. Most channels are sponsored with selling you things. I don't want to do that. They contact me all the time. I turn the offers down. These exchanges, they want to get you all leveraged up to wipe you out. I just ask that you just partner with me and take a moment to support the channel. But if you could just follow the link below and do that, I would really, really appreciate it. I thank you for that. If you're new to the channel, my name is Ron, and we follow the technical analysis of Bitcoin here. If you like the charts, subscribe to the channel and follow along. And we bounced off of our key horizontal support range here and our VWAP support. I talked about this in great length and detail here on Bitcoin. Again, I told you we could come back and test this level. We've now done that after the January low. That's where we bottomed. And again, it may not be done. We may be trying to get a higher low or a slightly lower low again in this area. So we'll be watching, but I am looking for a Bitcoin bottoming process, and then I think we're going to come back up, whether with a higher low or a lower low. I think we're going to of this low right here, but I think January's low will hold. Then I think we're going to come back up and take out this resistance right here and our 109,000 peak. So again, this is the area where I think we're going to find support. You take out this area and the January low, Bitcoin's in trouble because there's not much in the way of support right over here. There's just not much in way of support. So again, that would be a bearish event if we drop below this area and then stayed there. And that would mean we drop below the 100 period moving average and stayed below it, which would be bearish for Bitcoin. Well, I predicted the pullback. I think it's going to come to a conclusion here with the higher low or a lower low with our low here, but still above that January low, to be clear. Signals tried to get back in the positive portion of the cloud here, but it failed with our rally off of the lows with the tariff sell-off right here. Again, those are the lows that I think will be tested. Again, we had this divergence give us a bounce. I'm looking to see, did we confirm a higher low over here and eventually get back into the positive portion of the cloud to resume the advance. Momentum remains bearish. Back I warned you about is happening. I warned you about it before it happened. Most people predict things after they happen. I tell you what I think is going to happen before it happens. Here the swing move is still bearish in that the cloud is bearish, and then the ribbon momentum is bearish here. That has to change. We have to get above the ribbon. We have to get above the cloud right here to turn it around. So again, during this decline of 33%, we were consistently seeing the short-term trend bearish. It changed with the higher low at 52,000, and again, began to see signals all begin to turn back to bullish at that 52,000 area. They've been consistently bullish, some mild pullbacks up until we got here and got that bigger pullback in December and now here in January. So again, I'm going to be looking, do we establish a higher low and go higher? You got to get above this cloud here in order to turn that around. We tried to do it here and it failed. Got rejection at our trend lines there in the weekly time frame in doing that. And watching that 100 period moving average here, watching to see if the price oscillator firms back up around the center line here. It's gone negative. We've had the diversions mark this bottom right here. We'll see if we can confirm a higher low, or do we take out that low? We'll be watching. My guess is we're going to get a higher low, but I'm watching that low, that January low, very closely. Keep your eye on that 100 period moving average. In the most recent history for Bitcoin, again, you've had some volatility surrounding January and February, but again, you've ended up higher by the end of the quarter going into March. Saw that over here, some volatility initially, and we went higher over here. We saw a rally, but then got some volatility in February, but then ended up going higher there in March. So again, going to be watching to see if it plays out the same way. And if we do that, I think we'll go into that upper boundary of the channel I've talked about. Here it is in the weekly time frame. This is our log scaling. And again, I talked about this trend line from the 2021 low that separated the two 2021 peaks. And we turned off of that in December. We were told, oh, that's not going to happen. And yet it did. I told you about that when we had that happen. We got a gravestone doji in the daily time frame. And we had a nearly 18% pullback. We went back up to 109,000, tested that trend line again, got rejection there, getting this pullback. If we can reverse and get a higher low above the January low, we could attempt to clear that level and eventually move our way up to this upper channel line. And because we're taking our time pulling back, again, the longer it takes to reach that trend line, the higher Bitcoin goes. But talking about that 120 to 125,000 area, but we're going sideways and we're taking our time reaching that level here with the stalling in December and now in January again. So that could take us higher by the time we reach that level above 125,000. Certainly possible. Trend line's my target, not a number. Okay, the number is, I'm telling you, if we reach it sooner rather than later, you know, the 125,000 area, if we take our time, it could go higher. Bitcoin could reach that here in the upper boundary here in the first quarter, as I've said, but that's where I think that we are headed with Bitcoin. And right now we're struggling at our 10-week moving average, a red line right there. We're still holding above the 20. As long as we hold above the 20, Bitcoin can continue to try to go higher. Bitcoin follows the 20-week moving average in the weekly time frame. It follows a 10-day, or the 100-day moving average in the daily time frame. Again, I think Bitcoin eventually makes its way to the upper channel line here in our weekly time frame. With this week, we're still on an accumulation signal, so the lows of the week are being a buy the dip opportunity as we're seeing accumulation take place, just as we saw at the January low. We did see some distribution at the January high and the December high, but now we're seeing some accumulation here once again. So we'll be watching, does that end up building momentum to end up carrying us to this upper channel line? I think that will end up being the case. Now, again, Bitcoin continues to have a bearish reversal of conditions. Momentum continues to be bearish. I warned you that we're going to get a pullback back on inauguration day. We had that rally of 8% on the S&P, and Bitcoin, I should say, and we reversed. My signals have been warning of a pullback. We're getting it. But I think the January low is likely to hold. And again, I think that we will end up resuming the advance and go much higher. Again, bearish momentum remains. The oscillator is going into negative territory. This is a Bitcoin futures. We rallied up to the 10-period moving average and got rejection there today here with futures and on the Bitcoin price. Now, as we're here in the Friday session, Bitcoin had rallied up about 3.5% or so into our 10-period moving average. Might have just been under 3%, or just under 3.5%, but right in that neighborhood. We rallied up into our 10-period moving average. Again, the 10 has crossed the 20. The red line there is the 10-period moving average. Again, I warned you back over here with the rally on Inauguration Day, just as I warned you that we were going to bottom at this trend line right here, or the 100-period moving average. We bottomed at the trend line, and I told you again, we bottomed that day. We had a 6% sell-off. We rallied. I told you we were going to rally up. We were forming a bull flag. Everybody was saying, no, we got a head and shoulders, and we're all going to die. And I told you it's a fake pattern. The S&P did the same thing. And again, predicted that bottom, predicted the rally, predicted the top over here too, the day of the top and the day of the bottom, because of these trend lines. We had a trend line here that you're not seeing it here on the daily chart, but on our weekly chart. If you've watched my videos, you know we've talked about that trend line, and I told you we were going to rally up into it and likely get a pullback. We talked about it at great length and detail in every single video. We ended up dropping 18%. The people that never saw the sell-off coming over here at the trend line, all of a sudden down here at the bottom started telling us that we were going to see the bottom fall out of Bitcoin, and they got very bearish with the head and shoulders pattern. And I told you we're bottoming because the herd, a lot of them finally started getting bearish. So that meant we were bottoming. Told you we were going to go down and hit the trend line. The week before we did, I was talking about that on the 9th and the 11th on that weekend, and we ended up bottoming on the 13th of January. And again, I told you to be watching that trend line. I told you there was a very good chance we were going to bounce off of it because it intersected with horizontal support. It did. We had the rally going into Inauguration Day. This is Inauguration Day, and I told you we were going to sell off, back test the boundary, the upper boundary of the bull flag. That's all happened now. And again, I told you I thought the January low would hold, and we're going to pull back and get a higher low. We've done that now. And again, this low may hold. We may just be pulling back and getting our higher low now, testing the 100 period again, or we may try to take this low out slightly, but I think this low is going to hold. It may be that we get a higher low and then resume the advance. But again, you know, if you watch the videos, I'm a big believer in the 100 period moving average. I think we could bounce surrounding that 100 period moving average. Maybe, again, violating it here. Maybe that was the bottom. Maybe we tag it and we get a higher low. We'll see. Still can get a lower low. We have that gap fill on IBIT there, the Bitcoin ETF that still may get filled. We'll be watching for clues, but we're getting rejection at two important levels right now. We're getting rejection at the 10-period moving average again. That's where we got rejection back over here on Bitcoin, getting rejection at the 10-period moving average as the 10 crossed the 20. And then we're getting rejection with the 50 and the 200 on the 4-hour chart as they get a death cross. I'll show you that in a moment. But again, keep in mind, I am looking for a higher low, and maybe, again, maybe this is the higher low right here and we get another higher low. That would be great. Or we get a slightly lower low. Again, you can get these tests. We had a low here and we came back and we tested it right there. You did it over here, you tested it, and you tested it. You got it here, and then we went a little bit lower. I think this low right here in January is going to hold, but I'm looking for a test of this low right here that we had with the DeepSeek sell-off. Or pardon me, that was the tariff sell-off, and I think Bitcoin's going to carve out a bottom in this area, and then I think it's going to go back up and build momentum. I think it's pulling back to build momentum to clear this 108 to 109,000 area of resistance. So that's what I think is going on. But take a look at this chart. We're getting rejection at the 10-period moving average. Maybe we get an inverted hammer, or maybe it's a topping tail and we go down a little bit deeper into below the 100 period. Maybe we even take out this low right here. So far, we've seen a nearly 16.5% drop from that high right there. So far, it's been 16.5% down to our low here with the tariff sell-off. And we had over that 3% rally, close to, I think, 3.5% or so, or right in that neighborhood. And right now we're only up 0.85%. We'll be watching to see how we close. But again, you've got the drop back below the 50 period, the green line right there. We tried to get back above it, and the 10 and 20 have a bearish cross. So I think there's more work to be done in here. But like I said, I think this low is likely going to hold. Looking for Bitcoin to get another higher low. So the rally I told you would happen over here, the sell-off again, the bottom of the rally and the sell-off over here, and then again the top and the pullback right here. I think again we'll resume the advance once we finish this pullback. We're told once again was not going to happen. Again, the signals continue to be correct. The signals continue to nail it. I made some amazing calls because I have good indicators. Rejection here at the 10 period. Let's look at the 4-hour chart. Rejection right there at the 10 period, and previously rejection at the 10 period. Same thing with the 50 period and the 200. Let's take a look at that 4-hour chart. Now here's a 4-hour chart. I've removed all my annotations on this chart so you could just clearly see what's going on. Here we had, again, the inauguration day peak. We came down to the 50 period and we tried to bounce, and then we did it again, tried to bounce. Eventually we took out the 50 period. Here we overthrew it and we got rejection, overthrowing it, bouncing off of our 200 period, getting rejection, trying to overthrow it here. It failed. It failed to get back above that 200 and stay above it, and it turned right back down, and it dropped below the 200 this time, and now we're coming back up to the 50 for another test, getting rejection there, getting rejection, turning back below the 200, and now as they get the bearish death cross, the 50 crossing below, the 50 is a green line, the 200 is a black line. As they get the death cross, we're getting rejection again right there, and that is the same area where we're getting rejection at the 10 period in the daily time frame. So again, it is still suggesting that we're likely going to get a test of this low. Now, maybe that's a higher low, maybe it's a slightly lower low. My guess is the January 13th low is likely going to hold. But it may be that we test this area and go slightly lower and turn back up, or that we get a higher low and then come back and turn back up. And then I think we come back to move above 109,000. So again, we'll see how it unfolds here. But could we see something like this where we got a low here and we came back and we got a slightly lower low there at the January 13th low. Then we got the bigger rally to move above this previous high right here. It was actually a lower high. Remember, it was 108,000. We went up and exceeded this peak and moved towards testing 108,000 and got it. This was that lower high that set up. And again, everybody was saying it was a right shoulder, and I told you it's a fake pattern. So this is what I wanted to show you. We're getting rejection at the death cross here with the 50 crossing below the 200. Probably means more volatility down here, probably means a test of this low, and again another test maybe of this low should we move beyond that level. So we'll be watching. My guess is this low is going to hold. I called that January bottom. I think that low will hold, and I believe this is a corrective move that will establish a higher low. Maybe the bottom's in right here and we just get a higher low. That's certainly possible, but it could be that we get a lower low as well beyond this low, but still not taking out the January 13th low. Are you picking up what I'm throwing down? You're going to get a divergence here on the RSI in all likelihood. Again, we had a divergence over here. We had divergences in the past, negative divergences and bullish divergences. And I think you're going to see the MACD likely do the same thing here. I think the MACD is it's still a negative territory. I think it's going to roll over here. I think you'll get this divergence or confirmation of a higher low. Now, we had a low here. If we move slightly lower, you get the divergence. If you get your higher low, then you get confirmation of a higher low. It can play out either way. So we'll be watching to see which way it plays out. But I do think the January 13th low is likely going to hold. What could be the catalyst for the next rally? Again, all kinds of hopes about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Next week, President Trump is going to be announcing, laying out the middle class tax cut, tax cuts that they're going to try to get through and extend the current tax cuts from 2017. Could be something that the market rallies on along with Bitcoin. If we get this, the tensions between China and the United States regarding the tariffs, like we did with Canada, we got that pause with Canada and Mexico going into March, and that could rattle the market still later. That could rattle Bitcoin later. Do we see things calm down between China and the United States? Those retaliatory tariffs by China are supposed to go in effect Monday, I believe Monday on the 10th. Watching to see how all of this unfolds, but I think that Bitcoin is going to have a little bit more volatility. I think it's going to rebound back up. It's going to go towards the next resistance level at 115 to 117,000. If it can clear that, it can go to the 125,000 area or even higher, because we're taking our time reaching the trend line that I've been talking about in the weekly time frame. And as I keep saying, the trend line is a target, not some number. Okay, the longer we take to reach the trend line, the higher Bitcoin price may go. But again, I do believe that this is going to complete here, and then we're going to rebound. So I think you'll see something like what we had over here, or a higher low, one or the other. Show you the death cross here on the 4-hour chart. Wanted to show you the rejection with the 10 period and that bearish cross with the 10 and the 20 there on the daily chart that we just looked at. Live it, love it, learn it. Now, if I bring back my annotations on the chart, again, here's that fake head and shoulders. I told you everybody was talking about that. I told you it was a fake pattern. It evolved into a bull flag. I told you we back test. We are doing that. I told you we may throw beyond back into the trading range of the bull flag if we end up getting a deeper retracement. We did. Here's the January low. Here's our higher low with the tariff sell-off. We'll be looking to see if we can now get a higher low or a lower low, and that bullish divergence forms on the RSI and the MACD. Now, again, look at these divergences on the MACD. Again, you had the divergences form, and then the bearish divergences form. And again, I think you're likely going to get a divergence or confirmation of a higher low here with the Bitcoin price. Parameters gone negative with this sell-off. Again, it was a bullish divergence that marked this bottom over here. A rebound went into positive territory. If we go back into positive territory, then again, it's going to really be just showing the sideways range, which again could be building momentum to be able to go back up and take out the trend lines in our weekly time frame to try to go higher. I think that is likely going to be the case. I think we're going to rally up. There's going to be an inflation scare. I think, I told you what I thought would give us a rally. I think that, the easing of concerns about the tariffs, possibly the Trump tax cuts, or hopes of a Bitcoin strategic reserve and all these other things. But I think there's going to be disappointment. I think with the sell-off, I think it will be disappointment with the Bitcoin strategic reserve. I think there'll be an inflation scare with the inflation data. We're seeing that today rattle the market. The University of Michigan survey came out, and it showed the inflation expectations for the next year have now risen sharply. Expectations for inflation based on the Michigan survey, and this is showing the Michigan inflation expectations in the United States. It's risen now to 4.3%. That's the highest level since November of 2023, when it was at 4.5%. So again, this is why I continue to say we're going to get this freak out, inflation freak out, and with the tariffs and so forth, have more volatility with them, as I think we will. Get the inflation data, which we're going to get that next week, but eventually you're going to see that inflation data start to freak out the market, the CPI data. Why do I say that? Because the M2 money supply is rising on a year-over-year basis. It rose to 3.9%. So again, we know that the inflation data is likely going to follow that. Really what inflation is, if you follow the M2 money supply, it's increasing on an annual basis. Not going to be tariffs that create, now the market and the crypto community believe that, but it's not true. It's not going to be the tariffs that gives us the inflation. It's going to be an increase in the money supply, which is happening along with, again, the crazy government spending that we've had. It'll likely be blamed on tariffs, but tariffs do not create inflation. That's not what causes inflation, but most people believe that, and the media is doing a pretty good job of trying to convince people of that, but it is false. That's not what causes inflation. And any good economist worth their salt will tell you that. Fortunately, you have a lot of bad economists out there that actually believe this nonsense, like the economists over at the Fed. They believe that tariffs create inflation. It is simply not true. That's why they're so worried about inflation. That's why they're worried about the inflation rather than worried about the recession. Just wanted to show you that. That's what the market's selling off on today. Bitcoin's selling off on that. inflation, but eventually we're going to see this push upward. Maybe it's the Trump tax cuts or rally with the the tariffs being resolved with the tariff situation being resolved with China, whatever. Bitcoin's going to new highs, and then I think it's going to top out, and I think it's going to be an inflation freak out. I think it's going to be maybe disappointment with the Bitcoin strategic reserves. I think that Bitcoin is going to go up and reach my target level, and then I think it's going to peak. I ain't bullish on Bitcoin, but I did predict this pullback. It's happening. I think it's almost done, but not quite yet. Now, we saw that rally with Bitcoin, and that gave us this gap with IBIT, the Bitcoin ETF, which is really mirroring the performance of the S&P. I mean, it's really they're very close, and actually the S&P is following the IBIT ETF, but they're mirroring each other, very close, carbon copy almost to one another. This is the low I'm watching. Now, again, we got a higher low here. That's what I'm watching is, do we come back and does this low right here hold or not? Because we have this gap fill on IBIT, and we have it down here, and that gap here at this 53 area may be filled still. Here's a January low right here on IBIT with our bottoming tail and our hollow red candlestick. So again, going to be watching, does this low right here hold? And if not, do we go back and fill the gap, but still get a higher low above this level? That's what I'm looking at on IBIT. Now, IBIT could still form a bullish divergence, just as the 4-hour chart of Bitcoin can. If we turn down, you may get a divergence, or you may just get the higher low here. This low may hold right here. We'll see what happens. But you have this gap that I'm watching, and that was the day, I believe, of the inflation data. I think it was the PPI. Let's see, the 14th. Yeah, that would have been the PPI data, I believe. Get the inflation data next week, and we'll be watching that as well. Now, the 50 is about to cross the 200 right here. Let me just show you with my annotations on the chart. Here we gapped higher. It could be a gap and trap if we come back and take out this low right here. If we take out the low right here and try to test this low, or even take it out to try to fill the gap to test this low once again, which again is what I've been calling for. I don't know if we're going to get the higher low here or if we're going to get the lower low, but I've been calling for this pullback, which has happened. Again, just been nailing the turns here with Bitcoin and the S&P 500. They've been moving together, and you want to watch them because they have been doing pretty much the same thing. The head and shoulders pattern, evolving into the bull flag, and then the rally, the bottom, bouncing off trend lines, the rally with inauguration day ahead of it, the pullback that I've been predicting is pretty remarkable, filling the gaps with the DeepSeek sell-off here. We did that. The gap down with DeepSeek filled it. The S&P did the same thing, gap down with the tariff sell-off and filled that gap, and now the S&P's formed a rising wedge, and it's following Bitcoin, the IBIT ETF here, in that it's turning down. So pretty interesting. See my latest video on my Ron Walker channel. At the end of this video, I'll link it. You could see my latest video, S&P 500, if you're interested in looking at that. I'll just show you the annotations just real fast. Here's our 60-minute chart with the annotations. Again, that 50 possibly going to cross the 200, as we're already getting the cross on the 4-hour chart with Bitcoin. So we could see that here in the 60-minute chart. But I think we're bottoming out. So if this gap fills at 53.22, we don't have to fill that. Maybe we do it later. But if we do it right now, again, you might just come down a little bit lower here, fill this gap, get a higher low here, or maybe just beyond it, and then go and then bottom out. If we get a higher low, then again, I'll be watching to see if this low right here holds. So just pretty amazing though. But again, the bear flag, the S&P and the Bitcoin ETF here both did it, filling the gap here. They're and turning now. Their S&P's following the Bitcoin ETF IBIT. On the IBIT 60-minute chart, they bottomed together on the 13th. They had the rally, the breakout of the bull flag. Pretty remarkable. Went back to test the December highs. We got a slightly lower high here. S&P moved slightly higher, but then we got the pullback with both. Pretty amazing stuff. Watching the MACD and the RSI, do they end up forming a divergence in this most recent price action here with below from here. We do have a small little divergence right there, but do we get one back from this level right here? Do we get a larger divergence that ends up developing? Pretty interesting when you look at the RSI that has marked, the divergences have marked bottoms and tops here, and I've marked them here with the IBIT ETF. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got a larger divergence here with this low, or we could just build upon it right here. We don't have to take out the tariff sell-off low. We could just get another little divergence right here that would go right here, but still hold above this low right here. So either way it plays out, whether we go lower and fill the gap taking out this low, or whether we get a higher low, either scenario is possible right now. But I am looking for a bottom with Bitcoin, and then for the advance to resume. We broke this trend line right here. I'll be watching this trend line now and be looking for clues for a Bitcoin bottom. But I do think it is carving out, and I think that we will resume the advance. And we're being told now we have this double top. Here we had a peak over here in December, and we now have this double top. And people had told us that we had the head and shoulders pattern that I told you was a fake pattern. I think you have a fake head and shoulders and a fake double top pattern, because I believe this is wave 4, and we're now getting these first two waves of minor wave 5, the sub waves, and I think you'll get to establish a higher low here, and then I think you're going to get an aggressive push higher with the wave 3 of minor wave 5, that sub wave 3. Just quickly, if you look at the S&P 500, it's following IBIT's lead. Again, the bear flag over here filling the deep seek gap, this bottom on the 13th, the rally, the breakout of the bull flag, the bear flag here turning down. Now we formed a rising wedge. The IBIT ETF filled the gap immediately and turned down. I think the S&P is following it. But again, will we get a higher low above this level? Or a lower low, but regardless, to get a deeper Fibonacci retracement, regardless how it unfolds, I think that, again, you're going to establish a higher low. I think these January 13th lows will hold, and then I think we'll resume the advance. But again, the market, the S&P, following IBIT, not perfectly, but very close, and then following behind it as IBIT leads. Pretty interesting stuff.